Hello, and welcome to the SparkPlace Zoom class on designing at home, which will focus on software that you can use to create a wide variety of different designs from the comfort of your home computer. This class will go over each software in brief, list the pros and cons, and then show an example of something designed within the software. We will start off with a brief description of SparkPlace. We are the makerspace located at the Greene County Public Library in Xenia. Created in 2017, SparkPlace provides a variety of software and machinery that patrons can use. This includes 3D printers, CNC router and mill, as well as a vinyl printer and cutter. We also provide the full Adobe suite, as well as a variety of specialized software for each machine. A lot of in-depth design can be done here in the space, but most patrons don't have access to the more specialized software at home, meaning that a lot of time is spent in the very early stages of the design process rather than using the machine. This eats up machine time and slows down the flow of the space. Thus, bringing in files pre-made allows for you more time to actually use the machines, meaning that you can get more done in your allotted time. Let's start off with a brief description of graphic design. Graphic design is used to create images for you to use on generally 2D planes. This is mostly for use with printers, such as our vinyl printer and cutter, or the sublimation press here in the space. If you're just coming in for the first time, it's a very good place to start off with. Most of the machines are pretty simple and easy to use, and it's usually not as complex as some of the other software that will be discussed later. We'll start off with Canva. Canva is a web-based app that allows for quick and simple graphic design on the go. They have a website as well as an app that you can download on a tablet or phone. Some pros of using Canva is that it is a high ease of use. Everything is pretty much drag and drop, and then text can be edited simply by double-clicking it and changing whatever you would like to whatever you would like it to be. It is a large library of assets and graphics, which means that usually you can find a picture to use pretty quickly and easily. You can also upload your own images if you would prefer to have, say, your logo on there as opposed to just a generic picture file. It is web-based, which means that it does cloud save. This means that you can access it from any computer as long as it has an internet connection. You can also just download your files off of there pretty easily as well. There's a phone app, which means you can use it on the go. You don't have to be sitting at home on your computer or here in the space. If you want to work on it while you're on your subway commute, you could absolutely do that. The other big pro is that it is free to use. You do have to set up an account with them, but it's a pretty easy, quick process. Some cons of using Canva is that there is a paywall for some features and assets. Unfortunately, you're not able to resize your graphic once you have already set your graphic size in the software. This is an unfortunate thing to have locked off because most people want to be able to resize rather quickly. Unfortunately, you just have to start from zero. Some of their assets are also pay per use, which means that sometimes you'll have to pay $1 for an asset, but most of their stuff is free, and you can get away with not paying for a lot in this software. There are some size restrictions. Unfortunately, you can only design up to 84 inches square. This means that if you wanted to design something like a 10-foot banner, you'll have to scale it down and then scale it back up in another piece of software later on. This can be done relatively easy in our space, but unfortunately, it can also still distort your picture. Keep that in mind. Make sure you're using large quality pictures or vector graphics. Recently, Canva design files have been giving us errors when they're being used on our vinyl printers. The fix for it is rather easy. Essentially, we just throw it into Photoshop and then resave it out again. However, keep this in mind. It may take an extra 2 or 3 minutes for your design to come out while working with Canva. And here's an example of a pamphlet that was designed in Canva. You can see the design looks rather clean and is well laid out. I believe this is one of their sample layouts, so if you wanted to, you could change all of the text in here and put in your info instead. Next up, we will discuss Adobe Spark. Adobe Spark is software created by the makers of Photoshop and Illustrator, which is the primary software we use here in the space. It is also a web-based design app that can be used on multiple different devices. Some pros and cons. Pros are that it is, just like Canva, it is free. You do have to create an account, but it is rather simple. It also does cloud saves, so you can access it from anywhere. It also has a large variety of templates. This one does have a little bit more vector art, which is really good because the vector art scales exceptionally well, as opposed to stuff like PNG and JPEGs, which are compressed and aren't the highest quality out there. It also has a high compatibility with a variety of other software. This is because it's made by the same people who make the professional grade software. Photoshop and Illustrator will take Adobe Spark files with no problems whatsoever. They're pretty easy to work with, and it's really simple to get started if you have an Adobe Spark file. Some cons are that Adobe Spark has a particularly persistent subscription notification and has some premium templates. Basically, they will try to get you to subscribe and pay them X amount every month on the regular, and you have to consistently tell them no, or eventually pay them. It also has a very small job size of about 20 by 20. This is significantly smaller than Canva, and it is the main reason that we don't use this primarily here in the space. That is changing a bit because of the Canva file saves, but for a lot of jobs, 20 by 20 is more than plenty. And you can also scale down your design to fit within that and scale it up just like you would with Canva. It's also the newest software to be used by SparkPlace, which means that we don't know it as well as we do something like Canva. However, it's proven to be very quick and easy to pick up, and we have not had very many problems with it at all. After that, oh yes, and here is an example of something designed in Adobe Spark. They also put their watermark in the bottom corner, so please keep that in mind. But you can see that it is still a very high quality poster that they've designed here. And just like before, you could transfer in and out different text to make it more personalized for your needs. After that, we have 3D CAD. So for those of you who don't know, CAD stands for computer-aided design and is used to refer to a wide variety of design software. For right now, we'll worry about 3D CAD, which is specifically designing simple to complex three-dimensional shapes using your computer. This is very handy for developing prototypes, replacement parts, toys, and a variety of different other things. If you want a scale model of something, you can design it full size and shrink it in your CAD software, and suddenly you have a much smaller version of whatever you were working on. We have two primary CAD softwares here in the space. The first one is TinkerCAD. TinkerCAD is a rather simple 3D design software that is well known for its tutorials and its ease of use. You can see an example of the shapes that you begin to work with here in TinkerCAD. You can also see that there's not a lot on the screen. That's because they like to keep it as calm and simple as possible. Pros and cons. It is extremely easy to use. If you've never done 3D design before, I highly recommend TinkerCAD as a starting point. It's got an excellent tutorial that I recommend for anyone and everyone just getting started. And It is especially good for children because it walks through the steps plainly and clearly, but it doesn't talk down to anyone while it does so. The way that things are designed in TinkerCAD is that it uses shapes that you combine together to make your full design. Essentially, imagine it sort of like Legos, if the Legos could interlace with each other a little more in depth than they do already. It is also web-based, which means that you don't have to download anything, and it cloud saves just like all the other software we've mentioned so far, and it is free to use. Some cons is that it lacks some of the quality of life tools for ease of use and can be pretty simple to work with to a fault. If you want to do extremely complex, in-depth design that requires exact measurements down to the 10th of a millimeter, TinkerCAD probably isn't for you. But if you're just learning how to design and develop, it's a very good start. It also has limited size uploads. So if you wanted to load a very complex file, unfortunately, TinkerCAD might not take it at all, and then you will be back at square one if you wanted to make edits to something. This is an unfortunate reality of just being a web-based software, and there's not a lot that can be done for it inside of the software, unfortunately. And here's an example of a phone case that somebody made within the software. You can see that it has the TinkerCAD logo spelled out on the case and is made with a interlacing style. This is an extremely complex design, but it also shows you the basic building blocks on the right side. You can see that you mostly work with boxes, cylinders, pyramids, things like that to do most of your design work. And you can get away with a lot using just those basic designs. Next is Fusion 360. Fusion 360 is a very precise cloud-based CAD CAM tool for collaborative product development. What all of that means is that essentially you can work with multiple people on a single design that is using professional grade 3D design software. And it can also be used to run machines as well. Pros and cons. Fusion 360 is highly precise, accurate design work with a plethora of options available for the user to use. If you have a rectangle and you want a 2 millimeter chamfer on all of the sides, you can absolutely do that in here. If you need to develop a prototype for a working machine, you can absolutely do that in here using the variety of options. There is a pretty respectable skill curve. This means that starting off, you may seem a little bit overwhelmed, but as you learn more and more, suddenly a variety of options open up to you and your 3D design will absolutely flourish and grow the more and more you use this software. It has access to design animation, which means that you can make objects move within your software. The easiest way to think of this is imagine a piston rotating in an engine. You can create a working model of that piston going up and down and see any problems that are coming up with it inside of that animation. There is a free tutorial that is provided by the library. We like to recommend using Linda by LinkedIn Learning, and it has a wonderful 4-hour tutorial that will walk you through everything from placing your first shape to animating a walking leg. And it is an extremely good tutorial. I highly recommend it. The CAM features in this aren't used very often here in the space. However, they are excellent if you wanted to transfer your knowledge to another machine, which means that you can take working on our CNC router, learn how it works, and then use the CAM tools provided by Fusion 360 to run a different type of CNC machine relatively efficiently. Some cons is that there is a high skill ceiling. There is a lot that you can learn here, and there are a variety of options. And unfortunately, it takes a long time to eventually know everything about this software. And they're always adding new stuff, which means that you'll have to learn more. This is both a pro and a con, because having a high skill ceiling means that there is a lot that you can do. It just means that it's also a little overwhelming if you don't know what you're doing yet. After this, there are some problems that are really difficult to spot unless you know exactly what you're looking for. An example of this is a leg not walking in the correct angle, and it's because you have a section of that leg shortened by a millimeter or two, and that is throwing the entire thing off. And you will have to dig through and figure out what is causing this problem. The final thing is that it doesn't like to edit STL files. This is not a major problem for most people. However, if you find something on a website like Thingiverse, which has thousands of pre-made files, and you want to make a tweak to it, unfortunately, Fusion 360 probably isn't the best software for that. And here's an example of something made in Fusion 360. I believe that this is a working generator, and if somebody wanted to, they could run an animation of this generator going, and it will run theoretically exactly like it is supposed to in the real world. And you can see that there is a variety of very complex and detailed shapes in this design. Next up, we'll talk about our learning tools. These are things provided by the library that you can use at home to learn how to use some of the software we've talked about so far. The first one is Linda from LinkedIn Learning, which I mentioned previously in the 3D CAD section. You log in using your library card and your PIN number, and you can access thousands of different classes and courses. They have everything from Photoshop and Illustrator to designing in Fusion 360 or learning how to paint or use a camera. There are thousands of classes on here, and you get access to all of them for free. So it is a very excellent resource if you're just looking to start off with something new. And then if you search for Greene Library on YouTube, that will bring you to our YouTube channel. Inside of there is a playlist called SparkPlace, which has a variety of classes, tutorials, examples, and descriptions of things for you to use in the space. The best example I can think of right now is we have a walkthrough on how to use our embroidery machine that takes you from a PNG file at the very beginning all the way to embroidering onto a shirt, and it walks you through every single step along the way. This is very excellent if you aren't sure how to use a machine in the space and you want to learn, but you don't have time to learn the day that you want to use it. Watch the tutorial at home, come on in, we'll walk you through the rest of the steps once you get here, but it is a very excellent start before coming into the space. And then lastly, we have our unsupported programs. Unsupported programs, it is not that they are bad or worse than the software that we have here. It is simply stuff that we don't currently support and won't be able to assist you with, but for some people will absolutely be of some use, or will be an option for you to use if you don't prefer one of the other options that I've mentioned. We'll start off with Blender. Blender is a 3D design software that is more similar to shaping clay than it is to precise exact control. It is free to download and use. And I like to think of it as more artistic than Fusion 360. It's not that Fusion is strictly hard numbers and you have to do everything exactly. It's just easier to think of that way. It's that engineering artistic split that people sometimes describe. Blender leans more on the artistic side. Fusion 360 leans more on the engineering side. And since it's like molding clay, you can do very smooth, clean transfers and textures. It's used a lot for character design. If you wanted to design a character for a video game, Blender would probably be an excellent place to start. And there is a tutorial for that on Lynda by LinkedIn Learning. So if you wanted to learn, that tutorial would be an excellent place to start. After that is Inkscape, which is vector design software similar to Adobe Illustrator. You can create very complex and detailed pieces of art inside of this software. We simply don't use it here because it's similar to Adobe Illustrator, but it is not the same. So a lot of small things like shortcuts and where things are located in menus are very different between these two pieces of software. And learning how to use one and then learning how to use the other can sometimes be very difficult because you've already hardwired your brain one way and then you have to rethink about it in this other piece of software. It also doesn't have all of the quality of life improvements that Adobe Illustrator has. As a contrast to that, it is also free. So you get what you pay for, but you can also do a lot with it. One last thing of note is that it does not create cut lines on our vinyl printers. That is a feature that we have here. Unfortunately, that has to be done in Adobe Illustrator. There is no workaround or ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's got to be done in that specific software, or it doesn't work at all. After that, we have GIMP, which is very similar to Inkscape in that it emulates another software by Adobe. This one is more similar to Photoshop as opposed to Illustrator. It is also free to download and use, and it has the same basic pros and cons. It's free, it's slightly different, which makes it difficult for some people to work with if you're used to one software over another. There's also still that high learning curve that is also the same as it is with Photoshop. It takes a while to learn, and once you get used to it, you can do a great amount of very beautiful work within this software. Finally, there is one piece of software that we absolutely do not want you to use here in the space, and that's Microsoft Office. Over the past few years, we've discovered that Microsoft Office often has compatibility issues with our machines. This leads to things like software crashes, discolored pictures, incorrect layouts, and even problems that have led to the breaking of machines. As such, files designed in Microsoft Office are basically banned here in SparkPlace. Just because it has worked for you in the past does not mean that it will be able to work in the future. And we are very, very adamant about this. It's an unfortunate thing because most people have Microsoft Office on at least one computer in their house, but something about the way they save their files just crashes everything that we throw it at. And it does not help if you designed it in Word or Photoshop and then saved it as a PDF. It will still crash our machines, unfortunately. So please do not bring in Microsoft Office files. And that just about does it. This has been our class on designing at home. Hopefully we'll see you in SparkPlace soon and you can get to work. Have a good one.